We are here in beautiful Orlando, Florida. Travel, vacation, all of that sounds amazing. But behind the luxury and leisure, there is a hidden game of deception, and it's called fraud and scams. We are here today with one of our IntelFusion Partners experts, Wendy Hans, to talk about what businesses can do to reduce some of the losses associated with this new and emerging issue. So join us in for the conversation. I'm here today with Wendy Hans, IntelFusion Partners anti-fraud expert. Wendy and I have known each other for many years now. We actually met through the Restaurant Loss Prevention and Security Association, so I've been very fortunate to have known you for so long, and I've learned so much from you over the years, so I do appreciate that. And now we want to share that knowledge with others, which I think is a perfect opportunity to do through this vlog. Okay, so for the benefit of our audience, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, specifically your fraud and scams related background?
Oh, sure. So I'm Wendy Hans. I'm a certified fraud examiner and, more importantly, a fraud fighter. We don't like individuals to be, or organizations to be, the victims of fraud or scams. I have a few decades of experience in fraud investigation, fraud prevention, fraud mitigation, fraud awareness, and have served on the boards for the Restaurant Loss Prevention and Security Association as president, of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, their National Chapter Leaders Committee, and also the president of my local chapter. And I also have a lot of experience working with fraud for an organization, and I've seen fraud evolve over the years, which I find really interesting.
Amazing. And what I love about your experience is, again, the security practitioner's experience, working with the actual businesses inside of the organization. I know we also have law enforcement experts on our team that represent that perspective. And I think especially when the two of you come together,
yes,
I think that's extremely powerful. But today I definitely want to focus on the practitioner's perspective, because I think there's so many amazing lessons learned from everything I've learned from you over the years. So let's share that with our audience.
Yeah, I'm really excited. This is a beautiful area. I love palm trees, but there's fraud everywhere. So
exactly, even here.
Yes, even here.
So we're here to talk about fraud and scams, and I know that the two terms come together, but I think it's important to clarify for the audience with a little bit of a definition. What is similar between the two? Are they really the same thing, or how are they different if they are? Can you educate us a little bit?
Oh, sure, yeah. So scams are essentially fall into the fraud category. There's many different kinds of fraud. There's occupational fraud, which is a fraud by employees of an organization. I investigate those. There's also what I call more exterior or outside fraud, and those would be perhaps scams. And those are individuals that are coming into your organization and trying to steal from you. They're not internal, they're external. It's been very busy. I have to tell you, at the beginning of my career, I just did a lot of internal, occupational fraud investigations, but recently the scams have been very popular, as you know, and they've certainly ramped up. So.
Wendy, as I attend a lot of these conferences and listen to a lot of amazing experts out there talking about fraud and scams trends, the one thing that I hear is they're almost always a step ahead of us, right? There's new trends. These scammers and fraudsters are getting more and more creative. So tell us about some of the trends you have seen recently within the industry, just so that audience can be aware of things to look out for.
Sure. It's interesting because you used to hear about, this scam or that scam, but now there's just a list of them. It used to be we saw a lot of individuals that were calling businesses maybe late at night, getting the B shift and saying, take cash from your safe and, go and buy gift cards, and they would allege that they were an individual in the organization, or maybe that someone in the organization had been apprehended and, they needed bail money, or some story that they would come up with. Very convincing, very good. I think now we see a lot more sophisticated. We see a lot more online things, a lot more things that probably fall into like the organized retail crime-ish,
Yes.
That are being perpetrated on, all kinds of organizations outside of retail.
Yeah, and those specifically, from what I can tell, are targeting all levels within the organization, the employees on the ground all the way up to the C-suite. So it's definitely becoming a challenging issue. And one thing that I also hear a lot about is some people are just a little bit hesitant to admit I don't want to use that term, but I kind of have to, fell for it. So do you think that contributes to reporting issues?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think organizations, often they look at falling for a fraud or a scam as a failure. I know they always do that. And so it's tough. And it's after that they get that wake-up call. And I feel like instead of the natural, sharing it, they want to conceal it and cover up, and not, unless there's a requirement to disclose. A lot of organizations opt not to. Yeah. Some of these are, perpetrated, we talked about, at like the store level, but others, that are higher up in the organization, a lot of targeting the accounts payable, individuals that are reaching out, maybe a vendor was hacked, and they will reach out and, say, oh, please change my bank account information. Send the money here. I've heard multiple organizations that have been victim to that. Other things, just something as simple as, impersonating the CEO and said, oh, send me a list of, all of the tax information
I've been there
from last year.
I've gotten those.
Yes. Or send money to these people, send a wire transfer of a large amount. It is hitting all levels of organization. And I would say it's unprecedented. We haven't seen this much external fraud.
Wendy, so when I think about fraud these days, I'm thinking it's more than just a numbers game. To me, it almost sounds like psychology, especially when I think about scams too, when they're in a way preying on people and where people are potentially looking for some sort of validation in that specific context when we think about the elderly or the romance scams. So with that being said, what is the importance of training within business organizations to help everyone feel more confident about not only detection, but also reporting?
Yeah, fraud awareness training is so important. I believe if individuals see what fraud looks like, they will always recognize it. And that's really key because, the scammers are very good at psychological manipulation. They know what to say to convince people, to do what they want. And so they're practiced at it. So the training so that people recognize it and understand it. I like to provide examples of maybe past scams so they can see, this is what it looks like. A lot of people are just shocked that this would happen. They just can't believe an individual would do this, or they would spend the time. So the awareness so that they recognize it, and it comes to mind. And that's for internal and as well as external. I hate to hear about individuals that are the victims of scams. It's just always a sad scenario. And you were talking about reporting. I think a lot of individuals, are embarrassed.
Yes.
Or organizations are embarrassed. And so they don't want to share the information and report it unless they're required to do so. But there's a lot of value, like I said, in sharing the examples of it so people can understand, what a large loss it might be. The other challenge is there's not always a lot of benefit to reporting it because we're not able to hold the individuals accountable for various circumstances.
Yeah, that's
so there's not the motivation to do that, but overall it's really sad, but I think it's avoidable with some really good training for associates, for your employees to understand, in their work setting, what can come across their desk so they recognize it, but also, in their personal lives, going home, telling their parents, telling their grandparents, friends, and siblings so they don't fall prey to the scammers.
Absolutely. And what I like about, when I listen to you talk about this either in a presentation or some sort of training setting is, again, it can affect anyone from store level employees all the way to the C-suite level. We do have data showing that. And the point about, training for your organization and the lessons you can take back home to your family, to your life, so hopefully you don't fall a victim of these scams. I think that's priceless. So take advantage of it. And I think here at IntelFusion Partners, we're about creating that awareness and helping spread that. So I'm excited to work with more organizations so we can deliver that message.
Yes, help them so they're not the victims.
Exactly. Wendy, I think you know me pretty well from the risk assessment background, right? And my risk assessment experience is focused on physical assessments. What is the importance of risk assessment when it comes to fraud and scams, and how do you go about that within an organization?
That's a great question, Basha. Often people ask, how would people steal from us, or how would people steal from an organization? Mm-hmm. And, I think fraud risk assessments are so important. Essentially, it's a process similar to the risk assessment you do. Mm-hmm. We're determining all of the areas where people can steal from you, all the places with fraud risk. I like to start these with a brainstorming session. It's very fun. It's always my favorite activity for the year, to bring everyone in together, all of your experts from different areas of the organization, and ask, how do you think people could steal from your organization?
Okay.
And bring them together and just do a brainstorming session. You can do it old school with a whiteboard. I've done that before. You can do it via a Zoom call, but there's certain momentum that comes from it. Mm-hmm. Maybe people might be slow to start, but once they get into it, and asking what you've heard or other organizations maybe have had risks, or if there's already been things happening. But to get individuals really kind of pulling those things out. Mm-hmm. And then the next step beyond that is really assessing those from an impact perspective. How big of an impact is it going to make to your organization? Mm-hmm. Is it a small thing, the cost of doing business, or is it something that could create a financial issue or even a brand issue? Mm-hmm. Some of these things. The other thing is the likelihood. Some things, as I said, they're the cost of doing business. They're just going to happen every day, and that's fine. Other things people might think, well, that would never happen. Yeah. As an example, in the scams, it may be something that people thought, oh, it might happen every 5 years. And now they're like, someone's going to be knocking on the door trying to scam us, once a year. Your frequency should be evaluated. All of this should be evaluated on an annual basis. But it provides a nice overview where you say, here's my list. What do I want to attack first? Mm-hmm. What am I happy with? What would I like to improve? Yeah. And just a nice process to keep awareness. Some organizations can go through and look at the controls that are there to prevent fraud, look at the controls that are to identify the fraud. What are you doing to monitor it if it does happen so you know about it? Yeah. And then the other piece is, maybe you're not happy with that and you want to put another layer in, like a fraud data analytics layer, to go through and, monitor those high risk areas, just an extra level. Maybe beyond what the accounting or, regular procedures might involve. And so based on how you're describing it, it does make sense that it's a collaboration between different departments. And when you say data analytics, obviously I get excited about that piece. Data analytics, so important. Mm-hmm. Data is one of my favorite things. You never have too much data. That's why we connected so well. Yes, I love data. But data provides a very efficient way to look and see if you have issues. Mm-hmm. And you want to see how big is your problem, how big is your issue. Mm-hmm. With fraud data analytics, I think the most important thing is to find fraud quickly. Mm-hmm. Protecting organizations from fraud, the key is you don't want a large fraud. You want to keep them small. And so how do you keep them small? You find them very quickly. Yeah. We like $100 frauds. We don't like tens of thousands of dollars. Got it. So that's always my goal. And a lot of times that frequency that you're monitoring is based upon, what you think the likelihood and impact would be. Mm-hmm. some things you might be, okay, I'm just going to look at this every day because it's on fire and it's high risk and, we have a lot of losses. But then some things you might want to do weekly or monthly or even quarterly. And it's good to assess, where you are as far as the amount of risk, using numbers.
Yeah, and I think the point you make about the smaller amounts, I think that can be overlooked pretty easily, but they add up. And the whole point here is to prevent it and to hopefully get at some significant savings and have that budget go somewhere else. So there's a lot of savings opportunities, right, when you work with your team and other teams.
Yes, I think, one of the important things is, especially on the external fraud, we've talked a little bit about scams, is I talk about you don't want to be the slow gazelle. People are going to knock on the door, but if there's no one there and you don't answer, or, you tell them to take a hike, they're probably not going to come back.
Yeah.
So if you're stopping things quickly, then you're not going to have as big of a loss. Where, typically over time, people get more brazen. Online, there's the dark web.
Yeah.
People tell their friends. And then, it just balloons so quickly.
It does.
So, finding it fast, is the best policy, I think.
Wendy, so fun to run into you at this beautiful bar. I actually have a question for you. How would someone steal from you here in this setting?
That's a great question. So bars are a great example of where fraud can occur, fraud risk within an organization. So keep in mind that bartenders, they are taking your order, they're fulfilling your order, preparing it, and they're also collecting your payments. So there's no segregation of duties whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so, bartenders might do things like, give you a little extra in your shots, over pouring, or they might give you something for free, or they might, instead of ringing up the transaction, just put the $20 bill in their pocket. And if it's a credit card transaction, you have to monitor for them fudging your tip. Maybe you gave them a $5 tip and they put a 1 in front of it, and now they have a $15 tip. Lots of things on the bartender side. It's really important to monitor, the signatures of those frauds and look at red flags.
Yeah, so here's where we're getting into the internal issue a little bit more. I know we talked a lot about the external scams and fraud, so this one is important to keep an eye on and monitor and detect before it blows up on you, right? A little bit later. How important is training in something like this? Do you think it's effective?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of things, as an example in the bar area, to make sure they're using the jiggers and the certain process, and having those things, in place, and also making sure management is aware of what fraud looks like.
Yeah.
We talked about that once a person knows what fraud looks like, they always see. So you want to train management,
Got it.
On that.
Okay, that's an important one. So again, we always go back to training.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you, Wendy. Let's continue to explore this beautiful property.
Sounds great.
Going back to our conversation about collaboration, obviously it's extremely important internally between different teams, different departments. How about external communication and collaboration with other peers from the industry, with consultants, law enforcement? What advice would you give as far as that is concerned?
It's so important to utilize your network to find out what's going on. You don't want to find out about a fraud or scam scenario when you're the victim of it.
Yeah.
It's much better to find out what else is happening in the world, and hear about what other people are seeing and implement those controls in advance. I always encourage people to collaborate. Organizations, professional organizations, anything you go to, networking opportunities. I'm an introvert, so I'm not loving networking, but it's just so valuable.
It is.
You just have to do it, and it's a little tough, because you do have to be, willing to share the things that are going on that you hear about from your organization. but I think you can frame it in a way,
Yeah.
that it's still valuable for individuals.
Exactly, and that's how we met. I mean, we met
Yeah.
through one of these industry association meetings, conferences, so I think it's really powerful. And I think another important aspect is if you're a restaurant security practitioner, it's not just about the restaurant security associations. I think it's important to look at what's happening in retail and financial, hospitality, because a lot of these trends, the scams, the fraud, and other issues affecting security are similar, and you can actually learn quite a lot in terms of what they are, so hopefully you're not the first victim, but also mitigation strategies. And I know at IntelFusion Partners, that's what we're about. We're about bringing different sectors together for that cross collaboration. So absolutely important. Well, Wendy, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I think this setting is absolutely perfect and we should hang out here more.
Absolutely.
So as far as our future content, if you like what you heard from us, definitely stay tuned for more, because Wendy and I and our other experts will be putting together a lot more educational content like this for you guys. So stay tuned for that. And as far as us, what do you think we go and spend a little time at Disney?
Sounds great. I'm in.
Awesome. Let's do it.